Welcome to the Vault Excel. Happy hump day to the viewing audience. Please check my community board for said information, updates, and breaking news. Please take the polls on the community page. Thank you for joining me. This is a two-part live pertaining to the high-dollar defense attorney, Miss Ann Taylor. Should Idahoans pay the piper? And is the Titan owner liable? Well, he's deceased, and the person who founded this company with him is no longer, what I would say, full ownership. He has a minority stake in the company. I'm going to bring you that said information pertaining to the Titan sub. Once again, two-part live. And Taylor, should Idahoans be paying this hefty price for the trial? I'm going to bring you information pertaining to Liable County prosecuting attorney, the estimate of the salary that he and others make in the state of Idaho. And I'm going to bring you information pertaining to the Titan, the search for debris, and should whomever has access to this company, should they be liable for the deaths that occurred on that sub? Some people are not happy with News Nation. They did a countdown of oxygen the other day, 5 days ago, and it says News Nation slam for missing Titan sub oxygen remaining countdown clock. New York Post is the source. What's going on with News Nation? Do you think they should have had that clock on the screen showing pictures of the vessel in the water? Basically, I guess saying how much oxygen you would have until implosion. Do you find this insensitive to the decedents? I will put that also on my community board. Let's get to Mr. Kohberger. Courtroom confusion as Moscow murder suspect appears in Liable County courtroom 17 hours ago. KTVB is the source. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Brian Kohberger was back in the Liable County courtroom where a judge heard arguments from his defense and the prosecution over multiple issues.
Kohberger is the man accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students in a home just off campus in November of last year. And just yesterday, the prosecution filed their intent to seek the death penalty if a jury finds Kohberger guilty.
And that's not the only issue that got brought up today. News Channel 7's Morgan Romero was in court in Moscow this afternoon. Morgan, what can you tell us about what happened in court?
You know, guys, court today was a lot quicker than expected. If you were tuning in last night to the news at 10 and today on the news at noon, we said that we expected today's hearing to last several hours because there were 4 things that they were supposed to discuss. Motions to compel, the first motion, the second motion, and the third motion to compel, as well as motions to release the grand jury records and transcripts of those proceedings, as well as a protective order over all of those records. And then the last thing was going to be a motion to stay or pause proceedings, but they only took up 1 issue rather than those 4 issues on the calendar. They took up the 2 first motions to compel. On that third issue, the state said it wanted more time to respond, and today, just filed in the cases of interest database, the judge granted that order. That third motion has to do with the defense wanting information on genetic genealogy that was done that led the FBI to build a family tree leading to Kohberger. So on all those other things that were not taken up, I'm told attorneys are working together on those issues. Again, to reiterate, that's the motion to pause proceedings and the release of grand jury materials. A court spokesman says that is not necessarily unusual, and there may not be any hearings in the future about those things if they work it out behind closed doors and can resolve those. So on those motions to compel discovery, that first motion, the defense is asking for records of training related to officers who did several witness interviews. The state says that is not material to the investigation. They don't believe that they're going to call those officers to testify during trial, and they say it's out of the scope of Idaho rules to provide that information, those training records on those Idaho State Police officers and their backgrounds. But the defense says it is pertinent. These were interviews and interrogations that were done with witnesses that then led them to certain evidence and led them to, of course, their defendant, Brian Kohberger. That second motion to compel discovery has to do with investigative reports and conclusions from all cell phone analysis done by the FBI CAST team. So the defense is asking for all records and reports related to information that was used in the probable cause affidavit that led them to arrest Brian Kohberger, and it's also been used in several search warrants. Along with that ask, they're also asking for reports, communications, and documentation from the FBI forensic examiner who changed the year of the white Hyundai Elantra that law enforcement was originally looking for and changed it to the year that Brian Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra, they say, was made. So, few things are still working out. They say the prosecution isn't hiding these things from them other than the training records. They say the stuff from the FBI, they don't believe the prosecution is hiding it from them. They think that the prosecution is waiting on it, just as they are. So they're trying to compel the federal government to give them those documents. So the judge said today in an order, we are going to give the federal government by July 14th to provide these records to both the prosecution and the defense. The defense saying that all of this information is really pertinent to them providing a fair defense for their defendant, for Brian Kohberger, as well as now that the fact that the death penalty is on the table, it makes it even more critical and relevant at this time. Again, that hearing today not lasting as long as we expected. They didn't take up all the motions that were on the court calendar, and we don't know if they will take those up in a public forum or if they'll continue to work on those behind closed doors. Back to you guys.
I was going to ask, because of the shortness of today's proceedings, Morgan, if they had set maybe another date or something for a time to take up these other issues.
No, they've not. The only date that the judge gave today was that July 14th to compel the federal government, both the FBI task team and the FBI forensic examiner that looked at the Hyundai Elantra, to give the documents that the defense is asking for. And again, they don't think the prosecution is hiding those from them. They just want to really, compel the federal government to provide those and put a deadline on them, because it is bureaucracy that they're dealing with here.
All right, Morgan, thank you very much. And we'll hear more from Morgan coming up today on the news at 6. We'll also have reporting on KTVB.com.
All right, everybody. KTVB is the source. If you are curious to this information, all content audio is available in the YouTube queue. Let's discuss what was said here. Confusion in the courtroom. The defense is trying to politely say that they do not think that the state is hiding anything from them, but they're compelling the government to give up information, reports pertaining to the investigation that led to the arrest of Mr. Brian C. Kohberger. They're also wanting information of the police background. I'm assuming state police as well. Their training, grand jury selections. Just a lot of information they want. Miss Ann, what are you trying to say to the public, sweetheart? You don't believe that the officers that ask witnesses questions, what? They are not professional. They weren't professional. They don't have enough years in training. Well, you have to start somewhere. And that's just the way it is. Whether you are detective day one or year one, you have to have a start. The defense is asking the government, compelling the government to give them information by July 14th. The Hyundai, the year. Perhaps an officer or whomever was investigating assumed it was a certain year. Does it really matter? It's not like we're talking about a 1980 Hyundai versus a later model Hyundai, 2017 or whichever year the car was made in, 2011. You get my drift. We're not talking about a 30-year-old car. So I see where Miss Taylor is going. She and her cohorts. Perhaps some of the information is wrong. You have the wrong guy. All you have is DNA on a sheet. So perhaps you have the wrong person. But if roads lead to Mr. Kohberger as far as contacting the ladies, car seen over at the house, getting that ticket last summer, in the vicinity of the house, GPS showing he was at the house that day, that early morning, returning back. Any other time, you have to say, it's a very big coincidence, Ms. Taylor. So I'm going to ask again, what is the issue? The state says they need more time. Genealogy. The defense wants the genealogy information that led to the arrest. They want a lot. Very interesting. Were the officers trained? Police officers, state officers that investigated this case, were they trained? Did they follow appropriate protocol in getting information and transference of information, evidence in this case? July 14th, the defense is compelling the government to turn over records, information pertaining to BK. And they also are stating that they do not feel that the state is withholding information from them because they are also waiting for said documentation of reports and files. Very interesting. I want to play some more information pertaining to Brian Kohberger. This is going to be about cameras in the courts, so on and so forth. Court TV has brought forward yesterday's proceedings. And I think there's something wrong with this judge because we live in a modern world and people have the entitlement to read, research anything that's known to the public. And you can't assume that a person has not heard of an individual or a case because that's just unrealistic. Idaho is a very small state, so this judge should know that. I don't think there's a person living in the state of Idaho that has not heard of the 4 children being murdered, 4 young people being murdered, and also Mr. Kohberger as the suspect. So I'm trying to understand what biasness you feel will affect the potential jury because cameras are in the courtroom or they're showing him too close up. You're going to hear all that. Your state is small. And as I said, I can't believe there'll be somebody in the state, whether they watch TV, the internet, TikTok videos, YouTube, social media, homeless, whatever. They've heard of those kids being murdered and they have heard of Mr. Kohberger being the suspect. Let's get into that information. Once again, do you believe News Nation was in the wrong for having that countdown clock on their network pertaining to the Titan? We're going to discuss that later. That's the second part of my live. Brian Kohberger's attorneys fight for evidence in the court. It's a 29-minute video. This is by Court TV. Please check out that said information. Just bringing you all the latest pertaining to this case. And also the defense is claiming no connection between Brian Kohberger and the victims that was uploaded 1 day ago. This is the question I asked you all on my community page. Do you think there is more DNA evidence against Brian Kohberger from Moscow home, the victims, his old apartment, car, and the Pennsylvania house where his parents reside? 73% of you said yes, and 27% of you said no out of 132 votes. Thank you for your time. What does Brian Kohberger's body language reveal? This is News Nation. Mr. Brian N. is giving his commentary. People want to see the defendant. That's the whole purpose of the court. We don't want to look at the judge in every scene, and we don't want to look at the defense attorneys, and naturally they don't show the jury as to hide their identities. But what would be the purpose of going into court and only showing the attorneys and the judge? This makes no sense to me. News Nation is the source. This is pertaining to Mr. Kohberger's body language. Thank you for joining me, everybody.
He prohibited close-ups of the suspect. He made it very clear at the beginning of the hearing, which is somewhat unusual and interesting. The defense has argued that allowing viewers to scrutinize every blink and gesture could hinder Kohberger's chances of getting an impartial jury and a fair trial. In the almost 6 months since Kohberger's arrest, we've gotten only occasional views of him, mostly court dates. There were a couple times that I saw him outside when they would bring him inside different buildings, but for the most part, we've only really seen him inside the courthouse. The question is, has his body language changed over that time? What did his behavior today show? The people who study this, joined by one of those people, behavior and body language expert, Scott Rouse. Scott, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm curious, again, because Twitter was exploding today with people reacting to seeing him in court, really just analyzing his every move. What did you make of him today? Because to me, he looked relatively calm. I don't know if that's something that his attorney and Taylor has sort of coached him on, but he looked calm and composed.
You're always going to get someone that's giving you witness prep in a situation like this. And there are things you want to look for and things you want to make sure you see and make sure everything that is supposed to be there is there. The thing that really caught my attention was the fact that he has a lot of person lips cues. He does this a lot. It's really quick. He does a lot of those. And he also does this whole thing it's almost like a lizard tongue jut. It's not mouth grooming. Quite often we refer to this as mouth grooming when the tongue comes out and does something like that, but his juts out really quickly. These kind of things automatically took me to thinking this may be what's called or referred to as tardive dyskinesia, which is caused by antipsychotic drugs. And that's when you get those for schizophrenia and depression or bipolar disorder. That's one possibility of those. Another possibility would be we see those because those are the adapters he's using, the things he's using to get rid of the built-up stress and tension. But I'm not seeing built-up stress and tension anywhere else. He's not using adapters in his hands. He's showing no facial expressions whatsoever. In the first video that Christopher, your producer, sent, where he was in the orange suit in court, we did see one smile very quick, but we didn't see much at all in the eyebrow movement, in the brow movement. That lets us know that he's either super focused on what's going on, which normally he would be, or maybe he's on some kind of somewhere on the spectrum, maybe. But there's even though they say you can't see much, and what we don't want him to see is make decisions about his blink rate and things like that. His blink rate is fairly low. The normal blink rate for a person is about 15 to 20 times a minute. And this guy's is really, really low. We're not seeing much there at all. We are seeing some clenching of the jaw. That's why you see that muscle right there pop out. So,
I want to show you, Scott, there's a side-by-side we have of Ryan Kohberger's first court appearance and then the one today. And you can see them next to each other. And I want to get your reaction. You see here, this is him when he was in the car versus today. Is there anything? He did look kind of bigger to me today. I mean, he's had almost like a bulletproof vest on in the past. I don't know that he has that on underneath the suit today, which you see on the right side of your screen. But did you notice any major differences from him in the car before the arrest?
No, he's not wearing a bulletproof vest in that one where he's coming to court. I can tell you that. But in the car, he looks fairly relaxed. But again, we're not seeing some things we should see. We're not seeing the eyebrow movement, not much at all. And he's very calm, and everything looks, it's a great non-felony stop for the police officer. But in the court, he's fairly still in the car. But his face has changed just a little bit because he's relaxed in the car. But here he's focused on what's going on, and he's very apprehensive about what's happening. Every time you're in court, you're apprehensive.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there are people watching this for sure who are thinking, I mean, my gosh, you're analyzing every single move this guy makes. Who wouldn't be nervous in court? Exactly. Is this really fair to be doing this? The judge didn't want the camera to be focused on him the whole time. Brian Kohberger's lawyers have called body language analysis actually a pseudoscience that could keep him from getting a fair trial. What do you make of it?
We hear that a lot when it comes to being a pseudoscience. There's so much research that backs all those things up. If you're not dealing with someone who just Googles their information and comes on and says, this means so-and-so, this means so-and-so.
Yeah.
When you look at this from a neurological perspective, those are the things you want to look for. You want to look for things that will show you stress. We're not seeing much stress in this guy at all. We're not seeing anything in this guy at all. No emotions, no. When he says yes, he just leans forward and says yes and leans back. if they've done any training for him, they told him just to say yes or whatever, because he doesn't move much, he doesn't do much. But I go back to those things we're seeing, that all that lip pursing in every one of these videos. I didn't see it in the car, but I did see the tongue jet 3 times in the car. It's really quick little tongue jet that comes out. That's why I go back to that target dyskinesia and my concern about maybe there was a psychological situation going on there before all this. And he may have been on drugs for that.
And he's definitely, I mean, look, we've seen him in the car during the traffic stop. We've seen him with his dad in the car on that body camera video. Every time there is something very, very odd about his mannerisms and sort of the way that he interacts with people, which is interesting. It's interesting to hear you sort of analyze the way he looks in court. Scott Rose, thank you so much for coming on tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. Go to the news.
News Nation is the source. Brian Hinton, thank you for your coverage, sir. 27 viewing. Hit that like button. Why don't you? Thank you all so much for tuning in. Body language hasn't changed since his first appearance in court. He appears calm and composed, pursed lips. You have this gentleman saying mouth movements, tongue jetting. Notice it also in that car ride where he was pulled over traveling with his father last year. Could be side effects from using narcotics, schizophrenia, bipolar. He shows no emotions in this court proceeding yesterday. Is it right to be filming him, putting the camera on him in the courtroom? Well, it defeats the purpose of having the damn cameras in the courtroom. As I said before, who wants to just look at the judge and look at the attorneys? Naturally, we're not going to see the jury when it's time for trial, or the viewing audience that's sitting in the courtroom. So what is it we're supposed to be looking at? A judge. How interesting. A judge has the last name Judge. Can't make this stuff up. Jaw clenching. Is he nervous, upset, pissed off? I noticed that his first court appearance months ago. Still doing it, right? Jaw clenching, lips pursing, tongue darting out. What's going on with Kohberger? Is he jiving well with his attorney, Miss Ann, and the other defense counsel? Does he have a good rapport with his attorney? Because I'm going to wait to see how this trial transpires. And if after the fact he's found guilty, he wants an appeal, and will he want somebody else to represent him? We're going to get into also the salary of Miss Taylor. Is he on a sedative? His blink rate is low, says this gentleman. Very low. Once again, how is he jiving with his attorney? I'm curious. Very curious. As Taylor says, this pseudoscience of reading body language doesn't mean anything, I guess, to her. Because, true, he could be nervous on something, has some type of reflex from using drugs in the past. Because we notice from people who use drugs, they have all type of weird, crazy, erratic eye movement, tilting of the head back and forth, scratching themselves on their nape and arms and this and that, because drugs will do a numerous of things to the nervous system. Physiology, just physical things happen to the body. And you've seen this with people who are on drugs, acid, fentanyl, heroin, whatever the drug is. They have issues, hand movement, swaying, head swaying, rocking, because naturally they're craving for the drug, and the drug has effects because they put all type of different ingredients in drugs. So is his movement, facial movement, a product of his former drug life? And then we have to ask ourselves, was he using narcotics at the time of the murders? If indeed he is the perpetrator. Is he crazy? Some would say, not a nice word to use, Angela, but I asked it. And what is crazy exactly? You can do crazy things, but be lucid in knowing what you're doing. You did something erratic. It's what psychopaths do. crazy, erratic behavior, but yet you're lucid and you are in tune to what you're doing. Very interesting information. The judge doesn't want close-up of this defendant. I don't understand where you are coming from, sir. Mars, Jupiter, what the hell's the problem? What else are they supposed to focus on in the courtroom, the media? Just the attorneys and you? That would defeat the purpose of even having the cameras there. Fair trial for Mr. Kohberger. Oh, I say he's getting a damn fair trial considering what the state, the citizens are paying Miss Taylor. She's getting a nice lump sum of money. And I want to read that information to the general audience. Even the state had to ask for more money in trying this case. Well, some might disagree with you, Terry, because he planned this. He bought things in order to wear to the crime scene, gloves, clothes. They've got tags, I believe, receipts of things he bought. And 9 times out of 10, they only mention that because it was recent. Who's to say he bought it the day before, the day of the crimes? And when you're turning your phone on and off, that shows you are lucid. You know exactly what you're doing. Because data shows phone on at one time, phone off. Do you all believe cameras should be in the courtroom for this trial? Do you agree with the judge that there shouldn't be any close-ups of Mr. Kohberger? He wants people to follow the rules. Some people have not followed the rules. You hear that in the court TV segment. They're abusing their power. And he asked them to obey the protocol. So will they continue to have cameras in the courtroom, number one? What's the big deal about the close-ups of Mr. Kohberger? Miss Ann and her defense counsel are asking a lot of the court as far as records, data, genealogy, training of the officers. But in the end, Miss Taylor, all roads are leading to your client. That's how he got to be in jail in the first place. Idaho's a very small state. And you do all this putting on because you're trying to get your client off. We get it. But most of us who have a little bit of empathy in us know that what you're doing is hideous. But it is your job nonetheless. You're trying to find anything in the investigation to get this case thrown out. That's your job. Even if it means throwing somebody under the bus because of his or her credentials, what he or she didn't do right. If they've been brought up on any type of reprimand in investigating a crime and or misgivings in their behavior, that's your job. And I'm sure after this trial, you and your defense team won't be liked very well by law enforcement, because I got a feeling that's the road you're trying to travel down, is to get some deeds, some nasty deeds and goods on state police officers, FBI, whomever. Their tactics, the questions they ask the witnesses, because that was mentioned a lot during court yesterday. Witnesses, witnesses, witnesses. They talked to this witness. They talked to this witness. Yes, they did, Ms. Taylor. Yes, they did. One moment, you guys. One moment, please. Pardon my absence. I had to take a brief phone call. Once again, she's doing whatever she has to do to get her client off. That's her job. But as I said, there'll probably be some very unhappy people because when they start digging, you never know how far down the rabbit's hole the digging will go, especially when you're talking about law enforcement, their training, their background, any reprimands, any improprieties while on the job and off. That's what she's looking for. Let's talk about her salary, because there's a lot people need to understand pertaining to Ms. Taylor. And her salary. Thank you all for joining me. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $sign Big Angie 129 Cash App, stickers and chats are welcome during the live stream. This information I'm bringing to you is from 2/16/2023, back in February. Ms. Taylor is making $200 an hour, $8,000 a week, 40-hour week load to be a public defender for Mr. Brian Kohberger. This ranges at $380,000 a year, plus 60 FBI agents consulted on this case, yet there was no raise or incentives for them to do their job, as Ms. Jennifer Coffindaffer has said on her Twitter page. And she's trying to figure out why this woman is being paid this much money to represent this man who's allegedly killed these kids. You're entitled to your opinion if you believe Mr. Kohberger is the suspect or not. So I want to make sure I say allegedly, even though I do believe he did it. $380,000, that's a lot of money. Good money no matter where you live. Even though everything has gone up in America, rent, food, clothes, shoes, toiletries, but $380,000, you can still live off of $380,000. I don't give a damn if you're on the Pacific Northwest, California, New York, Chicago, Tennessee. Ting, you can live. And I'm sure the 380 is way more than what she was making before taking Mr. Kohberger's case, dropping Xana's mom to get on board because she was the only person qualified, I guess, in the general area. But yet when the Queen went to the list of lawyers that could represent Mr. Kohberger, that was right under 30 that were qualified to try the case. I'm just saying. Previous salary, $119,000 to $172,000. Now it's estimated at $384,000. Her new pay. So, Ms. Taylor, how much did you make before taking on Mr. Brian Kohberger's case? And I do think it's unfair to the citizens of Idaho that have to shuck over this money, you know, maybe a couple cents in dollars per person, but nonetheless, everyone has to pay taxes in some form or another. And this is a lot of money. And as I said before, even the state had to go in and ask for more money to try this case. I'm going to bring you that said information as well. Now, know that this money that she's being paid, that is without overtime. Co-counsel is making $180 an hour, 40-hour week load. So how much is the state attorney making, the DA? I did my best trying to find how much money Mr. Bill Thompson is making. The average prosecutor in the state of Idaho makes $68,000 to $100,000 a year. And as of May 25th, state attorneys in the state of Idaho are ranging $95,605. Right under $100,000. So is that what Mr. Bill Thompson is making, Liable County prosecutor? Under $100,000 versus this heifer almost making $400,000 a year, $400,000 a year to try a psychopath. And yes, it's the law that he is to be represented by counsel if indeed he asks for representation. But should that amount of money be paid to a defense attorney? Because I have never heard of a defense attorney making this kind of money. And Coffin Daffers believes the same. I've never heard of anyone making this kind of money. And I didn't know that defense attorneys could make this much. So as Coffin Daffers said, all these agents who came on board to try to find the killer, did they get any incentives or raises? Hell no. $380,000, you can pay off a lot of things. Let me think of one. Oops, my house. I have a mortgage. Bet you can pay that off, Miss Taylor. Oops, car note. Pay that off. Old debts, new debts. You can pay off a lot with almost $400,000. They woke everybody. And I hear she's very good at her craft, getting her clients off. That's why we have this hold up in court, wanting all these damn records of genealogy and this and that, and records of who said what to whom and what witness and what police said and how he asked the questions. She's trying to find a loophole to get Mr. Kohberger off. She ain't slick. She ain't slick at all. Once again, $200 an hour, $8,000 a week, 40-hour week work, $380,000 a year. Previous salary, $119,000 to $172,000. Hell, that's a big range. $52,000 range from $119,000 to $172,000. Basically, she's making $384,000 a year, and that's not including overtime. Co-counsel, $180 an hour, 40-hour work week. Very interesting. And as I said, Liable County prosecutor had to go and ask for extra money to help try this case. Mr. Kohberger being the suspect. Let's do a little research up here. DailyMail.com UK is the source. One moment, you guys. Sorry about that. This is the morning of calls I see. Afternoon. I can't even get this stream on. Daily Mail is the source. Prosecutors submitted the budget request to county officials on Tuesday, asked for $135,000 in trial expenses instead of the usual $15,000 amount. Kohberger's trial is set for October and expected to be lengthy and complex. Once again, Daily Mail is the source. This article was uploaded June 14, 2023. Prosecutors preparing for the trial of Idaho murder suspect Ryan Kohberger are asking for a dramatic increase in funding to cover trial expenses. Liable County Prosecutor Bill Thompson submitted his annual budget request to county commissioners on Tuesday, asking for $135,000 for trial expenses rather than the usual $15,000, reporting Lewiston Tribune. And as most of you know, Kohberger, 28, is charged with burglary, 4 counts of first-degree murder in November slayings of Kaylee, Madison, Santa, and Ethan. Trial is set to begin October 2nd, expected to be lengthy and complex as prosecutors seek the death penalty for Kohberger, a graduate student in criminology. It's hard to project exactly what's going to be involved, said Thompson. According to the Tribune, we know it's not going to be cheap. Thompson's budget request lists potential trial expenses, including compensating expert witnesses, witness travel fees, transcript fees, and exhibit displays. So when you sit here and think about that, $15,000. So now you have to ask yourself, depending on how many experts you would have, you have to try to divide that in your head with the original $15,000. Plus, as you hear, transcripts, travel, depending on where you're getting the experts from within the state or out of the state, $15,000. That's now been upped to $135,000. Kohberger is being held without bail in Liable County Jail. His arraignment in May, a judge entered a plea of not guilty on his behalf after he elected to stand silent in the face of the charges. On Friday, he appeared in court wearing a suit for a hearing over a gag order that largely bars attorneys and other parties in the case from speaking with news reporters. A coalition of more than 30 media organizations has challenged the order, saying it violates the Constitution's guarantees of free speech, free press, as has a lawyer for one of the victims' families. But prosecutors said the defendant's lawyers insist it's needed to prevent prejudicial news coverage that could damage Kohberger's right to a fair trial. It remains appropriate to have an order reminding lawyers and their agents of the rules of engagement in this country, and we try cases in court, not in the press, one of Kohberger's attorneys, J. Weston Loxton, wrote in a memo to the court. Interesting. One second. Okay. But prosecutors and the defendant's lawyers insist it's needed to prevent prejudicial news coverage that could damage Kohberger's right to a fair trial. Interesting. Second District Judge John C. Judge indicated he would rule later on the gag order and on a separate issue of whether to allow cameras in the courtroom during further proceedings. Kohberger was first linked to the case through surveillance footage of a car that matches his white Hyundai Elantra, which was seen in the areas of the murders. Investigators said they also found DNA matching Kohberger's on a knife sheath that the killer left at the scene of the murders. The evidence that could be brought in at trial is expected to be formidable. According to court filings, the Liable County Prosecutor's Office has disclosed 51 terabytes of information about the case to the defense team in discovery. That material includes thousands of pages of documents, thousands of photos, hundreds of hours of recordings, gigabytes of phone records, and social media data. Kootenai County Public Defender Ann Taylor is leading Kohberger's defense. DailyMail.com is the source. So, Mr. Bill Thompson has asked county commissioners for extra $120,000 to aid in this trial against Mr. Kohberger. Miss Ann is making a whopping $380,000+ to try this case against Mr. Kohberger. A lot of money. And the average salary for Idaho state attorney is roughly $95,000, $95,800. Nowhere near the amount that Miss Ann Taylor is making. Should the state be paying her this much money? That is my question. Because I didn't learn about witnesses being paid, not witnesses, but experts being paid, such as, your forensics and people to come in and give information about your psychological mindset. They pay those people. And I guess I never thought about it in all the years of watching trials, but they pay these people to come in and give their rendering of the suspect, their behavior, their background, their analogy of he or she. travel expenses, as you hear here, documents, displays. They're going to set things up in court naturally. They have to have, display of a crime scene, a bed, a chart, a visual chart of a street, a house, neighborhood, to aid in showing you the crime scene location of information they're bringing to the court. Should Miss Ann Taylor be paid this large sum of money to try Mr. Kohberger or any other defendant in the state of Idaho? That's my commentary. And I was trying to find the salary for Mr. Bill Thompson, but could not. And that's the best I could come up with through Wikipedia and the Google search. Wow. Very interesting. $200 an hour, everybody. $8,000 a week as a public defender. And as Ms. Coffindaffer has said on her Twitter page, 60 FBI agents assisted in this investigation, and neither of them received a raise or monetary incentive for searching for the suspect, because in the end, that's their job, such as police, state police, investigators that work with the defense and the state. Very interesting. I will put another poll up pertaining to this commentary. OceanGate, second part of this live stream. Should the owner, who we now know is deceased, whomever is receiving his estate, should they be liable for the deaths that transpired last week in the Atlantic Ocean? Let's get a little bit of that information out to you all. Once again, my condolences to the families of the victims of the Titan. I also read today that the Titanic is slowly, or rapidly rather, I won't say slowly because it's been so many years this is expected, it is deteriorating below the surface. And that's natural because it is in the water and it has been down there on the ocean floor for some time. So that's expected that it would deteriorate. And possibly one day someone will carry their tail down there, if they can get down there and make it back up. They can show us it's no longer there, the Titanic. Once again, should the entities that get the estate of the previous owner who died on that vessel, should they be liable? I'm going to bring you some information pertaining to this Titan sub. Thank you for joining me. I see you, Terry. 30 viewing. It's a very sad story. I personally would not have ventured that far down in the water. And frankly, I wouldn't have gone that far. Somebody put a comment on my page saying, I asked, should the boat have gone in the water, period? And someone said, no, it shouldn't have gone that far. Well, frankly, I don't think the vessel should have gone down there because it wasn't a sturdy vessel. Obviously, it was not looked at properly. So I don't think it should have been in the water, period. How about that? 1,000 feet, 13,000 feet. It's all the same. It's in the water. Global News is the source pertaining to this Titan sub disaster. One moment, please.
statement on the search and rescue aspect of the response. Since discovery of the Titan sub wreckage marked the conclusion of the search and rescue aspect of this incident, following Admiral Mauger's remarks, Captain Jason Neubauer, Chief Investigator, will also give a statement. The intention of today's press conference is to shed light on the purpose, scope, and priorities of the Coast Guard's Marine Board of Investigation. Questions should focus on the investigation. Any questions outside the scope should be addressed with our District 1 staff following today's press conference. Please limit your questions to one per outlet, and we will be ending at 10 minutes. I will now introduce Rear Admiral John Mauger.
Good afternoon. Over the past week, the world has followed the story of the sub Titan and the 5 people who perished in the terrible tragedy. The purpose of today's press conference is to bring closure to the search and rescue phase of the response and to inform the public of the Coast Guard's next steps. But first and foremost, I want to again express my deepest sympathies to the families. On Saturday, I had the opportunity to travel to St. John's to speak with family members directly. For those that I did not have the opportunity to meet with, I extend my deepest condolences on behalf of the United States Coast Guard and the members of the Unified Command. As I've continued to stress throughout, this case has been extremely complex, involving a coordinated international, interagency, and private sector response in an unforgiving and difficult to access region of the ocean. In total, the Unified Command directed 11 surface assets, 5 subsurface assets, 4 air assets, and completed 39 search and rescue sorties, totaling almost 13,000 square miles. And while the outcome was not what any of us had hoped for, I am very proud of the team of responders who put forth their best effort to locate the submersible. While in Canada, I met with and personally thanked members of the Canadian Coast Guard and the Canadian Armed Forces, who demonstrated the utmost professionalism and expertise throughout the response. I extended my gratitude to all the professional responders who worked diligently to evaluate all leads, mobilize resources, and maintain hope. Their devotion to duty in the face of many complex challenges ensured that we remained always ready to conduct search and rescue or rescue operations if needed. The discovery of the Titan submersible wreckage marked the conclusion of the search and rescue aspect of this incident. The Coast Guard has officially convened a Marine Board of Investigation into the loss of the submersible and the 5 people on board. That investigation will be led by Chief Investigator Captain Jason Neubauer. So at this time, I will turn over the mic to him. Captain Neubauer.
Thank you, Admiral Mauger. Good afternoon. Before I discuss the Coast Guard's investigation, I want to express my deepest condolences to the loved ones of the 5 individuals who perished in this tragic incident. My team and myself have been investigating this since we heard the initial reports of the loss of communications, and my entire team wanted to express their condolences also. As a senior investigator, I have witnessed the personal impacts associated with these types of events. And my primary goal is to prevent a similar occurrence by making the necessary recommendations to enhance the safety of the maritime domain worldwide. Upon receiving notification that the submersible Titan had suffered a catastrophic failure with the loss of the 5 lives on board, the Coast Guard declared a major marine casualty and convened a Marine Board of Investigation, commonly referred to as an MBI, on June 23rd. I am serving as the chair for that investigation. An MBI is the highest level of investigation the Coast Guard conducts, and enables the U.S. to fully leverage investigative resources, Coast Guard wide, and capitalize on an extensive network of cooperative relationships with international maritime administrations and organizations. The NBI is currently in its initial evidence collection phase, including debris salvage operations at the incident site, and evidence collection in coordination with Canadian authorities in the port of St. John's, Newfoundland. After the on-scene evidence collection efforts conclude, the NBI will typically hold a formal hearing to gather additional witness testimony and evidence in a setting that is available to the public. During the course of the NBI, the board will first and primarily work to determine the cause of this marine casualty and the 5 associated deaths. The NBI, however, is also responsible for accountability aspects of the incident, and it can make recommendations to the proper authorities to pursue civil or criminal sanctions as necessary. However, any subsequent enforcement activities would be pursued under a separate investigation. The NBI is also working in close coordination with other national, domestic, and international investigative authorities, including the United States National Transportation Safety Board, Canadian Transportation Safety Board, French Marine Casualties Investigation Board, and the United Kingdom Marine Accident Investigation Branch. Upon completion of this investigation, the NBI will issue a report to the Commandant of the Coast Guard, Admiral Linda Fagan, with the evidence collected, the facts established, its conclusions, and recommendations. The final report will also be shared with the domestic and international maritime authorities I mentioned, and the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, to help improve the safety framework for submersible operations worldwide. I will now take any questions. Thank you. The NBI leverages Coast Guard resources nationwide, and also our international partners to collectively collect evidence. And right now we do have ongoing operations. I mentioned 2 areas: the on-site of the accident wreckage site. We have an ongoing salvage operation, and we are also currently conducting interviews in the port of St. John's. I just, at this time, that is the priority of the investigation, is to recover items from the seaport. So we have already mapped the accident site and the field, and so the other factors would be part of the investigation. I don't want to get too deep into the details at this time, sir. What other locations beyond the Coast Guard? Yes, sir. I listed several international maritime authorities in my opening statement, including the Canada's Transportation Safety Board, the United Kingdom's Marine Accident Investigation Branch. It's really parties under international protocols. If they have a substantially interested interest in the investigation, they can request to be part of the Coast Guard's Marine Board. And we've accepted that. Often citizenship of the fatalities on board would automatically make that international country or maritime administration a party to, or a substantially interested state and a party. We are communicating with family members, and I'm not getting into the details of the recovery operations, but we are taking all precautions on site if we are to encounter any human remains.
So, as a matter of U.S. law and Coast Guard policy, the Coast Guard doesn't charge for search and rescue, nor do we associate a cost with human life. We always answer the call.
Amen.
And so the ocean remains an unforgiving environment.
Exactly.
And every weekend, there are risks that are taken as people go to the water with inadequate safety gear, with inadequate training. or voting while intoxicated.
Exactly.
But we still answer the call. We conduct disciplined operations with warranted risk to put our resources and our lives at risk to save others. That's who we are.
Certainly, that is one of the goals of an MBI. It's an opportunity to learn from the incident and then work with our international partners worldwide to do exactly what you mentioned. Improve regulations or international safety standards so that they have improved oversight of these operations and to prevent similar occurrence. I can't give an estimate this time due to the several of the international investigations going jointly and some of the evidence sharing. They really cannot give a timeline on the investigation itself. Sir, the Marine Board investigation will not be releasing evidence as it's collected out of concern for other investigative parties and the families involved, so that will not be heard at this time. Interviews are scheduled with crew members from the polar police. The salvage operations are ongoing. I'm not going to give the details of what the recovery has been to date, but the resources are on site and capable of recovering the debris. Okay. Thank you.
Again, thank you all for being here today. For any further media inquiries regarding the investigation into the Titan submersible, my staff and I will be available to provide that contact information.
All right, everybody. That's the Coast Guard's commentary pertaining to this very disturbing and very sad case. It's uploaded 2 days ago. Global News is the source. Thank you so much for your time. One moment, please. Should this company be liable? The owner was on the ship. I'm also going to bring you commentary where the company is derived from. The boat is registered in the Bahamas, so this is an issue. You also hear the Coast Guard saying we will be working with any agency that wants to file civil and criminal charges against this said OceanGate. Is the company, the owner, who's now deceased, liable for the deaths of the people? I asked this question on my community page, and some of you said, well, you're liable if you knew the vessel wasn't up to par. It wasn't licensed. It wasn't registered properly as a vessel to veer down in such treacherous water. The weight of water is heavy. I think most of us know this. It doesn't really matter how many feet. It's heavy. Water is heavy. You're talking about the ocean. You're not talking about a sink full of water. And statistics say you can drown in what? 3 feet of water? Exactly, because your face can be submerged in water. Toilet bowl, bathtub, sink, and you can drown. Someone is pushing you under. Let me bring you the set information pertaining to the Titan. Thank you for joining me. Once again, feel free to donate to this great network through Secrets and Chats. $BeGanji129 Cash App. Let's get to the gist of this story, everybody. Once again, condolences to the families of the victims. And will there be lawsuits? Okay, here we go. Let's hear what the co-founder has to say. He has a minority stake in the company. What is that percentage? And why did he leave this company with Stockton Rush? People Magazine is the source. Guillermo Solin, who co-founded OceanGate in 2009 with CEO Stockton Rush, said the Titan sub was very robust. This was uploaded June 23rd, 2023. The co-founder of OceanGate is defending against some of the criticisms of the Titan submersible. Guillermo Solin, who co-founded OceanGate in 2009 with CEO Stockton Rush, one of the 5 who died on board Titan, said the vessel went through a rigorous test program. I think one of the issues that keeps coming up is everyone keeps equating certification with safety and are ignoring the 14 years of development of the Titan sub, Solin told BBC Radio's 4's Today show on Friday, following concerns raised by director James Cameron and other experts. Any expert who weighs in on this, including Mr. Cameron, will also admit that they were not there for the design of the sub, for the engineering of the sub, for the building of the sub, and certainly not for the rigorous test program the sub went through. So once again, they're saying anybody who has something to say about this sub, including Mr. Cameron, the Titanic's director, will also have to admit to the public that they were not there for the design, building, the rigorous test program of the sub and what it went through. Mr. Solomon left OceanGate 10 years ago, but still remains a minority stake per the BBC. This was a 14-year technology development program, and it was very robust and certainly led through successful science expeditions to the Titanic, even over the last 3 years. Solomon added that he thought developers were in a better position to understand the risk and how best to minimize them, and that technology and innovation can outspace regulation. His comments came after Titanic director Cameron, who has made 33 submersible dives to the wreckage of the ship, and other experts raised questions about the safety of the sub. During an earlier interview with the BBC, Cameron, 68, had said OceanGate didn't get certified because they knew they wouldn't pass. I was very suspect of the technology that they were using. I wouldn't have gotten in that sub, explained the filmmaker. Cameron also said that the deep submersible community had previously raised concerns about OceanGate's vessel and had written to the company saying, as claimed by Cameron, you are going on a path to catastrophe. We now believe that our CEO Stockton Rush, Shahzada Dawood, and his son Suleiman Dawood, Hamish Harding, and Paul Henry Nargile have sadly been lost, the company said in a statement obtained by People. These men were true explorers who shared a distinct spirit of adventure and a deep passion for exploring and protecting the world's oceans. Our hearts are with these 5 souls and every member of their families during this tragic time. We grieve the loss of life and joy they brought to everyone they knew, the statement concluded. In a press conference on Thursday, the U.S. Coast Guard confirmed that an ROV discovered debris 16,000 feet from the bow of the tailbone of the Titanic, wreckage on the sea. Once again, 1,600 feet from the tailbone of the Titanic is where debris was found by the ROV. The Coast Guard said that the debris that they found was consistent with the catastrophic loss of pressure in the Titan chamber. The New York Times obtained a letter sent to OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush by the Marine Technology Society, MTS, in March of 2018. The letter stated that the current experimental approach adopted by OceanGate and the decision not to undergo traditional assessment could result in potentially catastrophic problems with the Titanic mission on the sub. So this is a letter that was written to Mr. Rush by the Marine Society in 2018. It would have been 5 years ago, coming up 5 years ago. That it needed to undergo traditional assessment as not to have a catastrophic event, which transpired almost 2 weeks ago. Separately, U.S. court documents show a former employee of OceanGate warned of potential safety problems with the vessel as far back as 2018, per the BBC. The documents show that David Lockridge, The company's former director of marine operations raised concerns in an inspection report. During his interview with the BBC, Cameron also called the similarities between what happened to the Titan sub and the loss of the Titanic and its passengers a terrible irony. We now have another wreck that is based on, unfortunately, the same principles of not heeding warnings, he said. OceanGate were warned. He went on to say that he felt in my bones that the sub had been lost soon after it was reported that it had gone missing. I immediately got on the phone to some of my other contacts in the deep submersible community. Within about an hour, I had the following facts. They were on descent. They were at 3,500 meters, heading for the bottom at 3,800 meters, he said. Wow. 3,500 meters, heading for the bottom at 3,800 meters. Comms were lost and navigation was lost. And I said instantly, you can't lose comms and navigation together with an extreme catastrophic event, a highly energetic catastrophic event. And the first thing that popped to my mind was an implosion. So I felt in my bones what had happened, he continued. So this entire week has felt like a prolonged nightmarish charade where people are running around talking about banging noises and talking about oxygen and all this other stuff. And the Coast Guard is out with airplanes. I knew that sub was sitting exactly underneath its last known depth and position. And that's exactly where they found it. The vessel went missing June 18th after setting out on an expedition to the wreck of the Titanic in the North Atlantic. However, approximately 1 hour and 45 minutes into the dive, the crew of the Canadian expedition vessel Polar Prince, this is the mothership, for those who do not know this, lost contact with the sub. Once again, 1 hour, 45 minutes into the dive, the crew of the Canadian expedition vessel Polar Prince lost contact with the sub, according to the First Coast Guard's district official Twitter account. If you need verification for this information, people.com is the source. So we have a man who was in partnership with Mr. Rush, who is no longer alive, left the company 10 years ago, believes this vessel went through rigorous tests, blah, blah, blah. But in the end, the water said, no, I disagree. Because that's the point of this story. The water has, not had, the water, the ocean has the upper hand. And whether they sign waivers or not, as someone said in the chat, it doesn't really matter, because if you knew that this was not a licensed vessel to be in the water in the first place, to do expeditions, then you are liable. And they didn't want this damn vessel properly licensed to do expeditions. As they say, the weight of water took this vessel to its final resting place, along with 5 victims who, yes, willingly went on the vessel. I personally would not have gone on the vessel, but to each its own. I've been invited to take a boat ride Saturday. It's a tour of the river, Knoxville River. I'm not going on the water, and I'm not going on the water at night. Hell no, because that's the whole point of the story. You never venture on the water at night because you have to think of safety precautions. If anything is to go awry on a boat, a ship, small boat, yacht, you're not going to be able to be saved. One, you have no life preserver. I'm going to say it again. You don't have a life preserver waiting for safety to get to you. And it's dark. So if you fall over in the water, you can't swim. You have no vest. You have nothing to cling to. What are the odds of you surviving? And this is not the ocean. This is just the river. But the river is massive too. My next source is beta.ctvnews.ca. A maritime law professor at Louisiana's Tulane University says the owner of a small submersible that imploded Sunday on its way to the wreck of the Titanic will likely seek court protection and soon. Martin Davies says he expects OceanGate Expeditions will try to limit its financial liability if families of the 5 crew members who died aboard the Titan decide to sue. Davies said in an interview that the company would first have to decide which country's liability laws would be most favorable. Such laws allow a vessel owner to cap the amount of money it could be ordered to pay out, but only if the owner can prove it was far enough removed from any wrongdoing. Once again, such laws allow a vessel owner to cap the amount of money it could be ordered to pay out, but only if the owner can prove it was far enough removed from any wrongdoing. And I don't think they can prove that because it wasn't licensed. Twain Brayton, a maritime lawyer in Maine, says he suspects OceanGate could have a difficult time proving it had no knowledge of the circumstances that may have caused the Titan to implode nearly 4 kilometers beneath the sea. He says a letter signed by subsea engineers in 2018 flagging concerns about the vessel's lack of certification could become a problem for the company. In this case, they're on notice, very specific notice about potential problems with the submersible, Brayton said. He said the situation is sad and complex, adding that while maritime law nerds like himself are watching with keen interest, they're also heartbroken for the families of those who died. Representatives from OceanGate Expedition say they have no comment beyond a statement issued Thursday announcing the Titan's passengers were presumed dead. The company's CEO, Stockton Rush, was among them. This report by Canadian Press was first published June 23rd, 2023. CTV News is the source. So there's certain laws pertaining to companies being liable and capping, I guess, the amount that they could be sued for. We will see who will sue and not sue, how it will stand in court, whether these people signed a waiver or not. The point is, in the waiver, what is it that you describe pertaining to the vessel itself and the standard of the vessel and its licensing and its ability to go down and come back up? Did these people know this was not a registered vessel to go into the water? That's the point. Was that stated in the paperwork? Because if indeed a waiver was signed by the 4 individuals, I can't see anyone in a sane, lucid mind signing paperwork saying, yeah, I'm about to give you all this money to go in this little bitty vessel that isn't licensed to go in the water in the first place. What fool would do that? But we have people who are adventurous, they're daredevils, and basically you signed your own death warrant when you signed the paper, if indeed you signed it, gave over $250,000 to go die in the water. And I don't know if any remains will be found because you have to use common sense. If the vessel exploded itself in the water, imploded, then that means the bodies of the people would have imploded as well because of the pressure. It's the pressure that made the vessel implode, perhaps. Or maybe there was something faulty with the vessel. I don't know. I'm not an expert on vessels. But let's just say the weight of the water, it was too much for the vessel. You can't logically think that the bodies would not have imploded as well. It's kind of common sense that there possibly won't be any remains. We will see. And as the Coast Guard said, it is our job to find people, no matter if it was something they did on purpose on the water, drinking while driving a boat, carelessness, horseplaying, accident. It is our job to retrieve vessels and the dead. Quote unquote, exactly. That is their job. Will the government, the Coast Guard, and other entities also sue for searching for this vessel? Anybody that helps the Coast Guard, such as the Canadian authorities, will they bring forward charges of liability, civil and criminal, against OceanGate? That'll be the next information I bring to you. Thank you for your time. So I've brought you information from people.com pertaining to the OceanGate co-founder, who is not a major, holder of monies into this company. He helped co-found this OceanGate with Mr. Stockton Rush, who also died in that vessel. So who will be the next person in line to run this company? Also, will this company stay afloat now after this terrible incident? Who would even want their name on this company after this? It won't be able to stand against lawsuits, civil and criminal charges. Very interesting information. Let me see if I can pull up the commentary from this Mr. Guillermo Solin pertaining to his commentary on how safe this vessel, was, in his opinion. Too much water to go in the first place. That's just my personal opinion. And Mr. Rush was very arrogant about this boat. Other people consulted with him to let him know that the boat needed its certification, rigorous testing. He didn't want it, and he let that be known. He's publicly spoken about it. And I played you that commentary the other day during a live stream. His own words, not gossip, not he said, she said, but his own words. Let's hear from the co-founder. The source is News Nation. Thank you for joining me.
Co-founded OceanGate 14 years ago with Stockton Rush. He talked about his friend and business partner and the take. So out hope, what have these past few days been like, and what has been your reaction to the news?
Yeah, it's been, as you can imagine, an incredible roller coaster of emotions over the past 3 days. I first found out that they lost communications with the sub on Monday, and the first 24 hours were especially difficult. And now I've spent the past 2 or 3 days preparing myself for this kind of outcome. But honestly, listening to the Coast Guard press conference, the finality of their findings is still difficult to deal with. I can't even imagine what the families of the crew are going through, or what the team members at OceanGate are going through after spending these past 4 days trying to find and rescue their teammates.
It truly is unimaginable. And in that same post, you also noted that when you co-founded OceanGate, your mission was to open the oceans for all humanity by using crewed submersibles. So what was your vision, and how did you end up partnering with Stockton Rush?
So Stockton and I met in 2008, and we shared this common passion for exploration, especially of extreme environments, both space and oceans. And in 2009, we founded OceanGate specifically to open up the oceans for all of humanity, so that we could learn more about the oceans, so we could explore the oceans, and so ultimately we could preserve the oceans. And I know that's the one thing that really drove Stockton throughout the entire time doing OceanGate.
So co-founding this company, were there red flags? Did you ever have concerns that something like this could happen?
Well, first of all of us that are involved in exploration of the deep oceans understand that there are substantial risks operating under such extreme conditions. We know that better than anybody, because that is the office in which we play. Stockton was one of the most diligent engineers and pilots that I'd ever met throughout my career in ocean exploration. And contrary to how some folks in social media and online have been portraying him, he was not a risk taker. He was very much a risk manager. If anything, he was fully committed to safety. And every innovation that he came up with was with the intent of pushing the bounds of what was possible for underwater exploration, while also improving safety.
So what sort of impact do you think this will have on the future of underwater exploration?
Well, obviously, right now it's too early to say anything because I know everybody wants answers. I want answers. The families want answers. The crew wants answers. And there'll be a time for that, and they'll be collecting data over the coming days and weeks. Depending on what comes out of that, the community, the ocean exploration community, will take a lot of lessons learned and move forward. Exploration is a very worthwhile human endeavor, and the best thing that we can do is honor the legacy of these 5 explorers and take our lessons learned and move forward.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation.
All right, everybody, this is an article in the People magazine content I just brought to you. This is Mr. Guillermo Solin, co-founded this OceanGate. Who will have proprietorship now of the company? Because he has a minor stake in the company. I don't know what that stake is. Why go down there, period, as a civilian? Did these civilians do their research? Did they sign a waiver? What was in the waiver? Was it told in the waiver this is not a certified vessel to go in the water or 13,000, 14,000 below the sea? What was in the waiver, if indeed one was signed by the 4 individuals? Was any of them apprehensive but went on the voyage anyway? Mr. Cameron, the director of the Titanic, says he's done 33 trips. Why? Once again, what is it that you're looking for down there? Why do you need to go down there 33 times? What is it that you need to see? You go down once, you take pictures through the looking glass, you come back up. Hey, I've been down there. Here are my pictures. Here's my verification. Why the hell do you need to keep going? The son and father who didn't go on the trip, I'm sure they're counting their lucky stars. They gave up their seats. And look what happened in giving up their seats. They're alive and 5 are dead, including the damn proprietor. This is deep, but it's still a choice. But as the Coast Guard says, no matter how they got down there, it is still our job to retrieve them and get them out of there. And you all need to think about that as well. No matter the decision to go down there, knowledge of knowing it wasn't up to par, this vessel, indeed, if they did indeed know, somebody has to go down there and retrieve that debris. So what are the tactics in retrieving the debris from the Coast Guard and any other entities aiding the Coast Guard to go down there? It's dangerous work. And what type of vessel did Mr. Cameron go in? Since he's opened Pandora's box to say he's been down there, what type of vessel did he use to go down there? Who owns that vessel? Is it the same vessel, same company? 33 times. You can't even make me logically understand a human wanting to go that far into the ocean to look at a wrecked ship. How many other people have been down there on different vessels through different companies to look at this wreckage? How much did they pay to go look at it? And should this company be liable for the deaths of the 4 other people? The owner himself is dead. And obviously he didn't care. He didn't care about rules, regulations. He didn't give a damn. And I don't see why anybody would pay a person that has this type of attitude. We already heard he was in a TikTok plane meeting the father and son or whomever, or one of the people to go talk to him about the damn trip. Somebody he went to meet, he was on a TikTok plane. He could have died in the air, hit the ground. He wanted to be an innovator. I'm going to do it my way, how I want it. Don't care what you say, what you think. I don't want to follow the rules, but we have to have rules. That's just the way the world is designed. You can't just do what you want when you want. And somebody should have been watching these people to say that can't go in the water. I don't care about you having an invention, but that can't go in the water. It ain't registered to be going down in the water. And you take a chance by making any type of boat and putting it on the water, let alone going in the water, damn near 14,000 feet down. And as I said, the highest altitude for a plane to fly is what, 30,000 feet or so? So you're talking about half of that. is going down into the water. So imagine half of that in the sky, a plane flying at 13,000 feet. He'd be not too far from the ground himself flying an airplane. But the plane is deemed safer than driving a car. And we've heard this many times from experts. Bringing you more commentary pertaining to this very haunting story. So Beta CTV News says perhaps the Titan owner will seek court protection. That was Mr. Guillermo, who has a small stake in the company. The next source is theguardian.com. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada, TSB, has announced that it is launching an investigation into the loss of the Titan sub. A team of investigators is now traveling to St. John's, Newfoundland to gather information, conduct interviews, and assess the occurrence. In a statement, the board said it was launching a safety investigation regarding the circumstances of this operation because the Titan surface support vessel, the Polar Prince, was a Canadian flag ship. Once again, the Titan's surface support vessel, which you heard mentioned earlier, the Polar Prince, was a Canadian flag ship. I'm going to read you a statement. In accordance with the Canadian Transportation Accident Investigation and Safety Board Act and international agreements, the TSB, as the investigation authority of the flag state of the support vessel involved in the occurrence, will conduct a safety investigation regarding the circumstances of this operation conducted by the Canadian flag vessel Polar Prince. You can follow this on Twitter, TSB of Canada. They will be helping with the investigation. 19-year-old was aboard this vessel. They said the young man was gravely afraid of going on the exploration, but he did so to please his father. Is that true? And who is the source of that information? Online commenters and journalists are calling out Stockton Rush, CEO, co-founder of OceanGate, who was killed aboard the Titan submersible for his goals of using his deep sea exploration tourism as a cost-effective tool for oil and gas companies. He comes from a wealthy father, I guess, who was in the oil business. Some believe that perhaps he was inventing these vessels to be coinciding with the other gas and oil companies. I do not know what the truth to that is. The Transportation Safety Board has announced that it is launching an investigation into this Titan sub. A team of investigators is now traveling to St. John's, Newfoundland, to assess the situation. UK and US officials picked up a large acoustic signal indicating an implosion of the Titan sub days ago, but did not release the information to the public or some members of the rescue teams because it was classified, according to a UK naval source. OceanGate, the company behind the Titan submersible, exaggerated details of the industry partnerships behind the development and engineering of its sub. Boeing, which most of you know who Boeing is, and the University of Washington have denied the company's claim that they helped design the sub. So is this all OceanGate and Mr. Rush design of the vessel or any other vessels through their company? Because we have now Boeing and the University of Washington denying any type of help in design of the sub. We have online commenters weighing in and journalists pertaining to Mr. Rush, who is no longer alive, about this exploration as a cost-effective tool for oil and gas companies. So they're trying to link his subs to oil and gas, some type of, what's the word I'm looking for? Partnership. I do not know if that's true. His father, Richard Stockton Rush Jr., is the chairman of Peregrine Oil and Gas Company, based in Northern California. In addition to his familial ties to the industry, Stockton Rush sought to sell his submersibles as a tool for companies who want to explore deep-sea drilling opportunities but aren't willing to pay for the machinery that would support that field research. In 2017, Fast Company article says Rush said that OceanGate wouldn't be involved in oil production, but instead we're just going to be involved in inspection, repair, and maintenance. I don't know what's the truth or not. Suleiman Dawood, 19 years old. Someone is stating he only went on this trip to please his father. They say he wasn't up for it. Azmi Dawood, the teen's fraternal aunt, told NBC News he took the expedition, which was Father's Day weekend, to please his father. I feel disbelief. It's an unreal situation. I feel I've been caught in a really bad film with a countdown, but you didn't know what you're counting down to, Dawood told NBC. You also can hit the link in this article to get her full interview. Five days ago, officials were searching the ocean floor for evidence and determining who will be responsible for investigating the internal disaster. The U.S. Coast Guard said a formal inquiry has not yet been launched because maritime agencies are still busy searching the area where the vessel fell apart. TSB, which is the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, announced that it is launching an investigation into the loss of the Titan sub. A team of investigators is now traveling to Newfoundland, St. John's, to gather information. A new mission to the submersible debris field near the wreckage of the Titanic is underway, according to the company behind the remotely operated vehicle, ROV, that first discovered the debris site. And once again, the UK and the US picked up a large acoustical signal indicating an implosion of the Titan days ago, but did not release that information. The search for the missing Titan submersible is expected to cost the U.S. Coast Guard millions of dollars. OceanGate, the company that built and ran the vessel, will probably not be required to reimburse the U.S. government for the search operation. But should they? Should the Coast Guard ask for monies to search? Because as you heard this representative say in this audio I played, please go back to the video, the early part of this video, where the Coast Guard representative states, we do this as a courtesy to anybody on the water with an incident, whether it's your fault or not, to retrieve you and the vessel itself, boat, etc. But due to the fact that this vessel was not up to par legally, should they be liable to pay civil and criminal damages to families and also the Coast Guard? Because if the Coast Guard is involved and any other entities involved in searching for debris, victims, or whomever, whatever they're looking for, whatever they find, should they be charged? Once again, it says OceanGate will probably not reimburse the U.S. government for the search operation. OceanGate, the company behind this submersible, exaggerated details of the industry partnerships behind the development and engineering. They've accused Boeing and Washington University as helping, but they are denying the claim. As most of you know, Mr. Stockton Rush was on this board, and he repeatedly dismissed, he was aboard this vessel. He repeatedly dismissed warnings over the safety of the sub, emails between Rush and a deep sea exploration expert show. Mr. James Cameron, the Titanic director, says it was only a matter of time. OceanGate was warned the sub could lead to literally catastrophic failure. An American investor had said he was offered cut price tickets on the Titan's doomed trip to the Titanic wreck and was told by OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush that the journey would be safer than crossing the street. So what was the cut rate amount? Because one would have to ask, what is the going rate for going 14,000 feet below to look at something that's wrecked? I don't know what you would charge. So is this $250,000 an equivalent amount to pay to go under there, considering it was a makeshift vessel? It wasn't made by a major company that makes boats and yachts and subs. Was this the right amount to pay a company to go below the sea? That's another question. The implosion was picked up by a classified military device in the North Atlantic and assessed by officials from the UK and the US shortly after communication was lost with the Titan vessel, UK naval source told I. It would appear the classified systems may have heard noises detailing an implosion. As well as all searchers, you have to remain optimistic until you can categorically declare to the contrary. UK's Foreign Office has been in regular contact with the victim's family, who might have been told different to what was made public, the source said. just recapping the information. A lot of this is just repeat information. But so far, TSB, Transportation Safety Board of Canada, has announced they're launching an investigation. And also our own Coast Guard has ventured that road to investigate as well. Let's see. So they have been down there searching. Now, the Coast Guard said on Friday that a formal inquiry has not yet been launched because maritime agencies are still busy searching the area where the vessel fell. So if they get enough from the search, will then the Coast Guard go forward with a formal inquiry? Debris was located about 12,500 feet, 3,810 meters underwater in the North Atlantic, not far from the Titanic wreckage. So 12,500 feet is where debris was found. The U.S. Coast Guard led the initial search and rescue mission. So where debris was found, it was only 3,810 meters from the actual Titanic wreckage. On Thursday, ADM John Mager said, I know there are a lot of questions about how, why, when this happened. Those are questions we will collect as much information as we can about now. According to AP, it's unclear who would have the authority to lead what is sure to be a complex investigation involving several countries. Exactly, you've heard that. The UK, Canada, US all have a stake in this investigation. For those of you who did not know, OceanGate Expeditions owned and operated the Titan. The company was based in the U.S., is based in the U.S., but the submersible was registered in the Bahamas. OceanGate is based in Everett, Washington, but closed when the Titan was found. Very pivotal information. The boat, the vessel, registered in the Bahamas, but the company registered here in America, in the state of Washington. Why is that? Why do you have two separate locations for the vessel and the actual company? Now the company is closed due to this OceanGate implosion. Meanwhile, the Titan's mothership, Polar Prince, was from Canada, and the people on board the submersible were from England, Pakistan, France, and the U.S. So how big is the mothership, Polar Prince? And why is it from Canada? So where was it docked and stationed? Canada, US, where? And this is why we have all this other business of other countries maybe being involved, because they're saying the people on board the submersible were from England, Pakistan, France, and the US. This is the mothership. I'm assuming it stayed afloat the water as to keep up with the Titan. And it lost contact an hour and 45 minutes after it went down into the water. A spokesperson for the Pelagic Research Services told CNN that the mission of the Odyssey 6 ROV is continued searching and mapping out the debris sites. And before that, a new mission to the submersible debris field near the wreckage of the Titanic is underway, according to the company behind the remotely operable vehicle ROV that first discovered the debris site. The ROV's mission, its second since discovering the debris site yesterday, began earlier today and will take about an hour to reach the location of the debris field, CNN reported. Spokesperson Jeff Mahoney added that any attempts to recover anything from the site will be a larger operation because the debris will likely be too heavy for the ROV to lift by itself. Very interesting. The company expects to be on site conducting ROV missions for another week, he said. All this was uploaded, I guess, about 5 days ago. A former employee of OceanGate said he was fired after he raised safety concerns about the Titan vessel, said he was profoundly saddened to learn of the loss of the Titan and its crew. David Lockridge, OceanGate's former director, as I repeated earlier, questioned the ability of the sub's hull designed to withstand such deaths in the 2018 lawsuit. In a statement to the BBC, Lockridge declined to comment on OceanGate or the 2018 lawsuit, but said, "My deepest condolences go out to the families of those who perished in this tragedy. I cannot imagine your pain at this time. I also extend my gratitude to the rescue services, military personnel, everyone else involved who worked relentlessly under challenging conditions to bring the Titan crew home. Their tireless efforts underscore the critical network in place to support our subsea community." So we have one person who sued this company in 2018, Mr. David Lockridge. He was the director of the marine operations. What is the status of that 2018 lawsuit? Did he get paid, or was it thrown out of court? What's the issue of that? We also have information from a former employee who raised safety concerns, and he was fired. And I believe that's this might be the David Lockridge who's given his opinion that was fired. Mr. David Lockridge. The Coast Guard has asked the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, to assist in the investigation of the implosion of the Titan. NTSB's Office of Marine Safety, in conjunction with the Coast Guard, will attempt to find the potential cause of the deep sea catastrophic event. So we have two agencies, NTSB and the Coast Guard, will attempt to find the cause of this implosion. If you need verification for this information, theguardian.com is the source. So once again, should this company, OceanGate, be responsible for the deaths of all parties? Because Mr. Stockton Rush was also on there. But he's dead, so you can't sue the dead man. We also heard earlier that it went down maybe, 12 times? So if indeed this was the 13th trip, what happened? Was there a crack? News Nation has information in the queue that there was a crack. I don't know if that's true or not. Was there a crack in the vessel? And if so, did Mr. Rush know of the crack and put it down in the water any damn way? Or did it crack while being submerged? And once again, this vessel is registered in the Bahamas. Why? The company itself is registered in Everett, Washington. Why two separate places? The mothership, the Polar Prince, is from Canada. So why do we have vessels from different locations? Canada, Bahamas, company registered in Washington State. Former employee had concerns, was fired, brought forward a lawsuit, 2018. What is the status of that lawsuit? And what is the stake that Guillermo Solon has in this company? 20%, 30%, 40%? Will he be sued? Who are all the owners of this company? Or any investors? Are there investors in this company? He left this company 10 years ago, Mr. Guillermo. Why did he leave? But as I said, he does have a minor stake in this company. Prevention. You hear this from the Coast Guard. What could have happened? I mean, what can they do to help prevent this event? Well, I don't see much that you can do, because they put this thing in the water knowing it was not supposed to be in the water, wasn't certified to be in the water. So somebody should have been on their ass not to have this vessel or any other vessels by this company or any other company in the water, period. 500 feet, 200 feet, 20 feet from the shore, below, whatever, shouldn't have been in there. So should the government sue this company for having it in the water, number one, killing these people, number two, not being regulated, number three? And why did Mr. Guillermo leave the company? Because I find it interesting, he left, but then he has a small stake in the company. So what is the small stake? Obviously, he has no regrets. He's still tooting for this dead man and this vessel. And what you have to say to yourself, Mr. Guillermo, why are you rooting for this man and this vessel when the vessel has imploded? The owner is dead. He never registered it properly, licensed it through the government and maritime or however it goes. So what are you bragging about? You're bragging about dead people, dead owner, and a vessel that wasn't up to par and did not meet the standards of subs and wasn't licensed to be in the water. I wouldn't be bragging about the vessel or Mr. Stockton. Mr. Stockton was a sociopath, in my opinion. He didn't want to follow rules, regulations. He wanted to do things his own way. And this is what happens when you have the big head, the God complex. You will reap. That's life. It's called karma. And it's not good to wish death on anyone, but you asked for trouble because you did not want to follow regulations such as other vessels that are in the water, on the water. Everyone has to follow protocol in any type of business. That is just the way it is. That is the whole purpose of buying a car, a house. You're buying it under the guise that it is up to par. Everything is standard, above standard. And so when you're talking about trading down into deep sea water to the ocean floor, why in God's name would you not want the vessel or any other vessel registered, licensed, properly maintained? The best quality of a vessel. Also on the inside, this thing was running by a fucking remote controller, game controllers, lights from a Hobby Lobby store or camping store, whatever you want to call it. This is all bullshit. Mr. Stockton, he met his maker on his own choosing. He had the big head, he was cocky and arrogant and did not want to follow rules, and that is why he is dead. And sadly, these people rode the ride with him into the abyss. As I said in my last stream, they went into hell. That water is hell, not past tense. That is the abyss, literally. And they willingly went there. And I do not know if he told them the thing was licensed or what, but if they didn't know for sure, they should have done their research before giving up the money. And as I said before, he flew to Vegas to meet someone to try to talk someone into also getting on the vessel. And I believe that man declined, and he said he showed up in a rickety-tickety airplane. So this goes to show you this man was also cheap, making money off of people using cheap products inside and outside to hone this vessel. That is not somebody you want to do business with. Basically, the people shook hands with the devil and they went into the abyss with the devil, literally. When I get more information pertaining to the Titan, the mothership, the Coast Guard, the Canadians, and anybody else aiding in the search, anybody that may sue, I will bring you that information. But before I check out of here, there was something I did want to mention pertaining to some people who dropped a lawsuit, and then I will check out of here. Please have a wonderful week. My week suggestion for the movie of the week is called The Assistant, now playing on Tubi. The lead actress is also the lead actress in the Stepmother remake franchise, black version. Please check out Tubi for those said movies. Hold on, they got something else about the Titan here. Let's see. Pictures of it. I think some of the debris. Fox 35 Orlando is the source. The Florida couple who sued OceanGate Expedition CEO Richard Stockton Russians decided to drop the lawsuit. They said in a statement, Fox 35. Mark and Sharon Hagel filed the lawsuit back in February after Rush reportedly refused to refund the couple over $210,000 they claimed to have spent on an expedition that was supposed to happen in June of 2018. Records show. Now the Winter Park couple released a statement Monday about the legal matter at hand, days after 5 people aboard the Titan submersible reportedly died after catastrophic implosion. Rush was one of those passengers. Like most around the world, we have watched the coverage of the OceanGate Titan capsule with great concern and enormous amount of sadness, compassion for the families those who lost their lives, Sharon and Mark Hagel said in the statement. We honor their zest for life as well as their commitment to the exploration of our oceans. As has been reported, we have been involved in a legal dispute with Stockton Rush, CEO, founder of OceanGate. In light of these tragic events, we have informed our attorneys to withdraw all legal actions against Stockton. The Hagels added that honor, respect, and dignity are more important to humanity than money, and send well wishes to the families who died in the 22-foot vessel last week. Mark and Miss Sharon Hagel, you'll see a picture of the two. They are from Winter Park, Florida. I understand they wanted to respect, but naturally there are probably some other people that will sue. I don't know what happened with their monies, but this just seems very strange to me. It says the couple's legal battle with OceanGate dates back to 2016. They entered into a contract that November to participate in a submersible dive expedition on the Cyclops 2 vessel. They paid $20,000 deposit and were scheduled to make 2 additional payments, but by September 16, the Hagels suspected the dive would be delayed and requested a refund. So they entered into a contract. They paid $20,000 deposit, and they were scheduled to make 2 more payments. But by September 2016, they suspected it would be delayed. OceanGate reportedly assured them they could get a refund if the trip was delayed. January 2018, the couple received new contracts requiring them to pay the full amount for the expedition, totaling nearly $200,000. The name of the expedition also changed from Cyclops 2 to the Titan. The couple said subsequent expeditions were repeatedly canceled, and then they requested a refund in June 2019. OceanGate informed them that they could only receive if they participated in a July 21 expedition. Additionally, the company had promised to hold their money in a separate escrow account, which they reportedly failed to do so. Fox 35 previously reported on the Hagels as they prepared to participate in the 4th crew flight of Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket in 2021. I don't know what that's about. Fox 35 is the source. So we have this couple taking back their lawsuit. This has been going on, 7 years, which makes no sense to me. Gave a deposit of $20,000, supposed to make 2 more payments, but it kept getting delayed. You will have a news reporter, you will hear in a commentary I played the other day, he didn't go on the mission himself because something went wrong on the vessel. So they said if they get 2 things that go wrong, they wouldn't put the vessel in the water. Okay? So that leads me to think about this story here. They had to have known the vessel wasn't secure enough to go in the water. So that's why they kept delaying the voyage. All you had to do was give the people their money back. And this would have been the end of the story. They should have never let it go on this long. And they kept trying to keep that money, Mr. Stockton. Because what fool is going to go year for year, being asked for a refund, and then say, well, if you take this trip, I'll give you the $20,000 back. Well, if they had died down there, the $20,000 is null and void once again. So this behavior and this lawsuit, the behavior of Mr. Stockton Rush and his entities showed that he was not up to par with his business tactics. He knew something was wrong with the vessel. And it doesn't matter if it had been in the water 12 times. Those were 12 lucky times it went down and came back up. It didn't this last time, if this is indeed number 13. And you have a couple now saying, we're not going to worry about it. We don't want to disrespect the family, the process now. Chalk the money. It's still their money. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if a person is rich, wealthy, or not. It's still their money. It's their money. If they say they want their money back because of delayed trips, they're entitled to get it back. We're now in 2023. This is an event that took place in 2016. There is no way we should still be talking about $20,000 7 years later. Mr. Rush should have given the people their money back, point blank. You knew it was not up to par, your vessel. You changed the name. That's also interesting. Why? because people don't like bad news and they don't want their name in the street as being, what's the word? Fraudulent. And that's usually when people change the name of their company. Oh, let's change the vessel name because people are talking bad about the company and these people are suing us. Well, see, you could have alleviated all that if you just gave them the damn $20,000 back and got that damn vessel up to par. Cyclops 2, the Titan, which is now sunk and exploded. How about that? Exploded more than sunk. See, God don't like ugly. You've gone down in the abyss with these people and died down there. And as someone said, a woman said in the commentary I played the other day, they felt nothing. Because you wouldn't even have time to react with the vessel breaking open. You are a part of the implosion. If the vessel imploded, common sense, the remains, the bodies imploded as well. That's my commentary. I don't recommend anybody going that far into the water. People deep sea dive all the time, wanting to see nature. That is your choice. You like to climb up to the highest peak. That is your choice. You like to go hiking in the mountains, prepared. That is your choice. But some of you need to stop trying to play God and accept nature for what it is. You do not need to hike to the highest peak, Mount Everest. You do not need to sail around the world on a TikTok boat. You do not need to be flying around the world on a TikTok plane, jet, and you don't need to go 13,000 plus feet to the bottom of the ocean to look at a wrecked damn boat that is slowly or rapidly deteriorating. And as one man said, this is not a joke. The people who lost their lives on the Titanic, it is real and it's serious. 1,000 people lost their lives plus, from allegedly a careless operator of that vessel. And here you have a part 2 of somebody wanting to take people down into the abyss. They foolishly go behind him and they die alongside him. And the fact that a child only went to please his father is even more disturbing. And this is why I say you have to know your lane. Pleasing people is never a good idea. Above ground or under the ground. And sadly, a child lost his life allegedly by pleasing his father. So now you have a life lost. He didn't even get to be 50 years old, 30 years old. Who knows what he could have done in the world? Greatness. And I believe a lot of people who have money, they don't like following rules either. Because what'll be sad if we find out these people knew damn well the vessel wasn't up to par and licensed properly, and they went on the voyage anyway. Waiver, no waiver. See, knowledge is key. And if you went on that vessel knowing it was not licensed, you were fooled to go on there. And any fool that ever rode on the other 12 trips, you were fooled to go get in the vessel. You see, the past, as they say, is a precursor of the future. The fact he changed the name should tell you something. The fact he didn't want to give this couple their $20,000 back. The fact he kept delaying the trip. That lets you know that something was wrong with the vessel. And that's probably what all these down payments and $250,000 and $500,000 payments were, or however much these people paid. It was to get this vessel up to par. But if you're not following protocol and regulations, you can't get it up to par because you're not even trying to use the standard equipment and tools to make the vessel right. So it would never be right. Prayers to the victims' families. Prayers for our Coast Guard and the NTSB and the Canadians who are going to try to help get the debris off the ocean floor or whatever's left over in the ocean. Or if there are any remains floating about, which you should know by now, there are sea animals, mammals down there. We don't have to explain that process. Once again, you're welcome to donate to this great network through chats and stickers, and also Cash App, $Big Angie 129. The first part of this live stream is pertaining to Ann Taylor. I believe she's a dirty bird. Anytime a person drops a woman as a client to go represent the woman's child's killer, shows you her character. And the fact that she's making damn near $400,000 a year to represent Mr. Kohberger is foul and disgusting. And I've never heard of any public defender making this kind of money. I just assume they made their standard pay for representing a client. And I doubt the state attorney, Mr. Bill Thompson, will get an incentive for representing the 4 victims. It's amazing how the attorneys start to mimic their clients. He's entitled to a fair trial, Brian C. Kohberger, and these children are also entitled to get fair representation in court as well. I brought you the information pertaining to the wranglings in court yesterday. Cameras in the court, judge don't want close-ups, wants this man to get a fair trial, but in the end, nobody wants to look at the judge and the lawyers. That defeats the purpose of the cameras being in the courtroom. I do believe the defense is trying to say there are improprieties on the investigators, that maybe they didn't ask the appropriate questions or weren't qualified. They weren't qualified to investigate. But in the end, when you're a cop, you're just that, a cop. You're an investigator, you're an investigator, either day 1 or day 20. And you're only going to learn the job by doing the job. I want to thank you for your time. Happy hump day. Please go to my community board for said information updates. Please take the polls on my channel. I will put up another poll pertaining to the contents in this live stream. Have a wonderful week. You have been listening to The Vote XL.